Welcome to our channel, Trade with China. We are in the new session, China Business Stories, introducing the most prosperous Chinese international companies and their establishers' stories, which is vital to future cooperations and better understanding in trades with China.
Exactly. And today we are going to talk about Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, a well-known name for all importers and exporters of China. You'll be surprised by their presence in the world. Understanding this story is really crucial if you want to get a handle on global trade today.
Absolutely. I mean, the scale alone is just mind-boggling. We're talking about effectively the world's biggest virtual shopping mall. At one point, Alibaba's value was flirting with $300 billion.
Which, briefly put it ahead of Amazon and eBay combined. It's huge.
So our mission today is to really dive into how this happened. We want to unpack Jack Ma's, let's say, unconventional journey.
And look at the core structure he built, this iron triangle concept, and some of the key moments, the really pivotal decisions that fueled that explosive growth.
It all starts, surprisingly perhaps, not in Silicon Valley, but with an English teacher, Jack Ma.
Yeah, poor math scores. Famously, almost proud of not getting the tech side of things, programming and all that. Earned him the nickname Crazy Jack.
Crazy Jack, because his ambitions were just seen as outlandish.
Pretty much. But that lack of a standard tech background, it might have actually been an advantage. He wasn't thinking about elegant code.
He was thinking about solving problems for actual people.
Small businesses, right?
Exactly. And figuring out how to get them online, how to make it work for them. Which kind of leads to the name, actually.
Alibaba.
How did they land on that?
Well, he wanted something everyone knew, easy to say in lots of languages. And he apparently tested it out. Just walked up to people in San Francisco, maybe 10, 20 strangers.
And asked, Alibaba?
Yeah, and they did. Plus, it has that open sesame vibe, opening doors for small businesses.
That fits. And the actual founding, it wasn't exactly glamorous, was it?
Oh, not at all. 1999. His tiny apartment in Hangzhou. 18 co-founders crammed in there, including his wife, Zhang Ying.
And right from the start, they had these massive goals.
Two big ones. One, take on the Silicon Valley giants and win. And two, build a company that would last for 102 years.
102 years, so it would span 3 centuries, starting from 1999. That's audacious.
Completely. Especially for an English teacher starting out in his apartment.
So what was the spark? What really pushed him from teaching English into this internet world?
Okay, so this is maybe the key origin story. His first trip to the US, 1995. He was actually there to sort out some failed business deal, completely unrelated.
Right.
And while he's in Seattle, someone shows him the internet, first time he'd ever touched a keyboard connected to the web.
And the first thing he searched for? I love this part.
Beer. He searched for beer, found American beer, German beer, no Chinese beer.
Right.
Then he searched for China, and basically nothing, almost zero data.
Wow, so the light bulb just went on. China was invisible online.
Instantly. He realized there was this huge gap. So get this, he goes back to his hotel, and within hours, he throws together a super basic website for his translation agency.
Just to see what happened.
Yeah. And almost immediately, 5 emails pop up from the US, Japan, Germany. Just like that, he saw the power, the potential to connect China.
But it wasn't a straight line from there to Alibaba, was it? There was China Pages first.
Yes, China Pages. His first real internet venture, basically an online business directory. But it didn't end well.
What happened?
He got into a joint venture with a big state-owned company, Hangzhou Dife Communications. They took a 70% stake, held most of the voting shares.
And Ma lost control.
Completely sidelined. It was a painful lesson, but absolutely formative. He swore he would never, ever lose control like that again.
And that failure directly led to a core Alibaba strategy.
Absolutely. It led to the famous shrimp over whales philosophy.
Meaning focus on the little guys, the small businesses.
Exactly. He figured, look, 85% of the fish in the ocean are small. While the big American B2B sites were chasing the giant exporters, the whales, Ma, saw the real opportunity, empowering millions of small Chinese businesses, the shrimp, that have been shut out of global markets.
That decision, that focus, became the bedrock of Alibaba.
It's in their DNA, and it directly shaped what he called the iron triangle.
Right, the 3 pillars: e-commerce, logistics, and finance. And the key is, they weren't separate things, were they? They reinforced each other.
Precisely. It was a closed-loop system designed to fix real problems in the Chinese market at the time, like trust, logistics, payment.
Okay, let's break it down. First pillar, e-commerce. Taobao and Tmall. What's the difference?
So Taobao is the big, messy, exciting one. C2C, consumer to consumer. Millions of tiny stores, like 9 million micro stores. It's free to set up shop.
Free. How do they make money then?
Advertising. Very much like Google AdWords. Sellers pay to get noticed. Then you've got Tmall.
Tmall's the more polished one, right?
Yeah.
The B2C, business to consumer platform.
Yeah, think of it as the fancy online shopping mall for the big brands, domestic and international. And Tmall does charge commissions, maybe 3 to 6%.
So they captured both ends of the market, the tiny entrepreneur and the huge corporation.
And crucially, they made it interactive. You could bargain with sellers using their chat tool, Ali Wang Wang. You could demand refunds quickly if things weren't right. It built credibility.
It really helped shift the perceptions from just made in China to
bought in China. They unleashed domestic consumer power.
which brings us, inevitably, to Double 11, Singles Day.
Ah, Singles Day, November 11th. Originally just as sort of anti-Valentine's Day for single people.
And Alibaba turned it into, well, the world's biggest shopping day, Chuangshidi.
The scale is just hard to comprehend. Let's take 2015, for example.
Okay.
Over 14 billion US dollars spent in 24 hours.
14 billion, that's what, 4 times bigger than Cyber Monday in the US that year?
Easily. And get this, $1 billion spent in the first 8 minutes.
Wow. That's not just shopping, it's a cultural phenomenon.
And Ma played up the spectacle, didn't he? Big, televised galas, celebrities. I think Daniel Craig was there one year, Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, total showmanship. But there was a serious economic point too, right?
Absolutely. China had, and still has, very high savings rates. Consumer spending was a relatively small part of the GDP, Double 11 kind of. Unlocked that pent-up demand. It gave people a reason, a platform, and excitement to spend.
Okay, so you've got this explosion in e-commerce, but how do you deliver everything? That leads to the second pillar, logistics, Kanya.
Right, because if you sell that much stuff, you generate a lot of packages. On that 2015 Double 11, 467 million packages.
467 million. How many people does it take to deliver that?
They needed something like 1.7 million couriers just for that one day's orders.
So how did Cainiao handle it? Did they build a massive delivery fleet like, say, Amazon or JD.com?
No, and this is key. They went for a light asset model. Cainiao, which means China Smart Logistics, didn't buy thousands of trucks or build endless warehouses.
What did they do?
They focused on the data. They integrated and coordinated thousands of existing logistics partners, trucking companies, delivery guys, warehouses, especially that network of independent couriers, the Tongbu Gang.
So they were managing the information flow, optimizing the existing network rather than owning the physical stuff?
Exactly. It was the opposite of their main rival, JD.com, which went heavy asset, building its own infrastructure. Ma's approach let Alibaba scale incredibly fast without the massive capital investment. It was kind of genius, leveraging China's fragmented logistics network and making it efficient with data.
Very smart. Okay, pillar 3, finance. Alipay. This feels crucial, especially back then. Lack of trust was a huge issue for online payments in China, right?
Huge. How do you convince millions of people to pay online for something they haven't even seen yet, from a seller they don't know?
So Alibaba had to basically invent the trust mechanism.
Pretty much. And that's what Alipay did. It worked as an escrow service. You, the buyer, pay Alipay. Alipay holds the money. Until you receive your goods, you check them out, and you say, yep, this is okay. Then, and only then, Alipay releases the funds to the seller.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Simple, but it solves the core problem.
Instantly fixed the trust gap. And it worked. Alipay ended up handling, like, over 3/4 of all online transactions in China by volume.
But they didn't just stop at making payments safe, did they? They used that trust to go further.
Oh yeah, they went right after the established banks. They launched Yubao.
Money market fund.
Right, and it offered much better interest rates to ordinary people than the big state-owned banks typically did. Billions flowed in almost overnight.
Ma had a bit of a jab at the state banks, didn't he?
He did. He jokes they were the love to deposit, not love to deposit banks, basically saying they took people's money for granted and didn't care much about the small saver. Alipay and Yubao empowered the little guy financially. It actually forced the big banks to up their game.
So you see how these 3 pillars, e-commerce creating demand, logistics delivering the goods, finance enabling the transaction, and building trust locked together.
It created this incredibly powerful, self-reinforcing ecosystem.
Okay, beyond the structure, what about the philosophy, the culture? Ma's famous hierarchy always stands out to me.
Yes. Customer first, employee second, shareholder third.
which sounds nice. But in the face of Wall Street pressure after a massive IPO, how do you actually stick to that? That shareholder third part is pretty radical.
It is, but Ma genuinely seemed to believe it. He argued that if you obsess over the customer, you create value. If you treat your employees well, they'll deliver that value. And if you do those two things right...
The shareholders will eventually benefit the most, just maybe not quarter by quarter.
Exactly. It was about playing the long game, resisting short-term profit demands if they compromised the core mission of serving those small businesses, those shrimp.
And this feeds into that unique culture, the Jack Magic idea.
Yeah, things like the internal company slogan, embrace defeat.
Embrace defeat. That sounds counterintuitive for a hyper-successful company.
Right. But think about it. In many business cultures, especially traditional Chinese ones, failure is hidden. It's seen as shameful. Ma wanted to create a culture where people weren't afraid to take big risks.
Because big risks are necessary for big breakthroughs.
Precisely. You have to be willing to fail, sometimes spectacularly, if you want to innovate and win on a global scale. Embrace defeat gave people permission to try ambitious things.
And there were other cultural quirks too, right? Nicknames.
Everyone used nicknames drawn from martial arts novels. Ma's was Feng King Yang, apparently a super skilled, unpredictable swordsman. It fostered a less hierarchical, more collegial feel, even as they got huge. They even had things like collective company weddings on Alley Day.
Trying to keep that human touch despite the enormous scale.
I think so. At the end of the day, Alibaba's success wasn't just about the tech. Lots of people had tech. It was about understanding the market, building trust where there was none, and creating efficiency in logistics and finance systems that were, frankly, underdeveloped.
They filled institutional gaps.
Exactly. They used technology to build the infrastructure, financial, logistical, commercial that wasn't quite there yet.
Looking ahead, their CEO, Michael Evans, has said, Alibaba was born in China, but we are for the world. They clearly have global ambitions.
Definitely. And the core lesson, I think, for anyone looking at global business isn't just about e-commerce platforms. It's about how Ma built an integrated system.
A system that solved multiple problems simultaneously.
Yes. The genius was knitting together e-commerce, logistics, and finance so tightly. It created this incredibly resilient ecosystem that was really hard for competitors to attack piece by piece. You couldn't just build the better website, you had to compete with the whole system.
So the big takeaway, maybe, is about identifying those systemic gaps or inefficiencies in a market.
And finding ways to integrate solutions, often using technology, to create a whole new level of trust and efficiency. That model has huge implications everywhere, not just China.
You know, what really strikes me going back through it all is how critical that early failure with China pages was.
Absolutely. Learning that harsh lesson about losing control seems to have informed almost every major strategic decision he made afterwards. Sometimes, yeah, the biggest failures really do pave the way.
An amazing journey. We hope this deep dive into Jack Ma and Alibaba has offered some valuable insights. Your comments really encourage us to realize our video value and update more useful information.
Definitely. If you like this kind of content, please press like icon E and subscribe us, not to miss the possibility to understand and make money in trades with China. We'll be back with more China business stories.